and welcome to The Public Good. This is Deja James with Partnership for the Public Good, or PPG, uniting over 380 partner organizations across Western New York to make a better Buffalo Niagara region. We do policy and advocacy work, and right now we are in the height of advocacy season for our community agenda. Last episode, we talked about the entirety of our community agenda for 2025, and now we are getting into the nitty-gritty with each agenda partner. We are so excited today to be joined by Push Buffalo, People United for Sustainable Housing, sorry about that, and Buffalo DSA, which is Buffalo Democratic Socialists of America, to talk about Good Cause Eviction. On the community agenda, the title is Pass Good Cause Eviction Protections to Ensure Housing Stability for Buffalo Renters, which is asking the city of Buffalo to opt into Good Cause Eviction protection under New York state law. And so I'm going to let everyone here introduce themselves, and then we'll get into, for our watchers and listeners, what Good Cause Eviction is. But maybe we'll actually start over here with you.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Richard Dredd. I'm a volunteer with Push Buffalo, and I've been adversely affected as far as landlords as a renter over the years, and I see Good Cause is going to be something that I'm looking forward to, so to stop the landlords for abusing our community, especially the minorities in our community.
Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Alok Pinto. I'm the co-chair of the Infrastructure Committee for the Buffalo chapter of DSA, and an organizer and a plank partner with Push on the Good Cause Eviction plank.
Yes, and thank you for having us here today, Deja. I'm Janaea Capers. I'm the Housing Justice Organizer at Push Buffalo, and I work on the Good Cause Eviction plank, and this is just something that we really need here in Buffalo.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, it is Black History Month, and I forgot to mention that because for me, Black history is all the time, ever present, always. But this is a part of a special series that I wanted to do here on The Public Good to talk about issues specifically on the agenda that disproportionately affect Black and Brown residents in the city of Buffalo. So I'm really happy to once again be joined by you all. But first, can we get into it? Maybe I'll start with Janaea. What is Good Cause for people that may not know what Good Cause is, and why or why not has Buffalo decided to not opt in, or where are we at with that?
Yeah, I will start by saying that Good Cause or Good Cause Eviction, or GCE, that's a couple of ways that I will probably be referring to it, was a law that was passed in April of 2020, April 20th, 2024. And this was a long-standing fight that housing organizations throughout New York State have been fighting for, and it was passed on the state level. And it can help folks like some of the things it gives you new like housing protections, such as guarantee like lease renewals. It stops like unjust rate hikes, and also it makes sure that you are protected against like retaliatory evictions. So those are just some of the things that Good Cause Evictions helps you gain.
Absolutely. And we know that that's a huge issue. I'm sure listeners or watchers like have had a terrible experience with a landlord where they felt unsafe in their home or felt like the stability of their housing was at stake. I'm wondering if either of you can talk about like the experience possibly of why we need this so much in the city, and what residents are facing right now without good cause.
Yeah, this is Richard. I might be able to comment on some of that. I'd like to point out that my family, we moved about 18 times before I got out of high school, all on the east side. And all the houses we lived in were in bad shape, everything from mold to whatever, rodent problems. And we approached the landlord about it. You know, we usually got evicted or, you know, asked to move. And the list gets short as far as the housing availability in Buffalo. When you get evicted, most people don't realize it, don't think about it at the time, it affects you going to your next household. They're not going to rent to you because you had it on your record, been evicted. So East Side in particular, you know, we adversely affected by that. So some of those things that concern me, that they use reasons like they had to raise the rent, they had to paint the house, So since they was going to do that, they asked us to leave, or they had to make other repairs. Hopefully, a good cause, they won't be able to use those excuses anymore, because those things are not necessary for us to move or absorb those costs. And they raised the rent, so we had to leave. So I'm saying again, before I got out of high school, with 18 times that we moved all on the east side, and as a child, I was in special ed, and that was mostly because I keep going through different schools, 9 different schools. I never was in one school long enough to stay on track with everyone else. So fortunately, when I got older, I started teaching myself how to learn and excelled. However, from 4th grade until 9th grade, I was in special ed. And I look back at those experiences and think about how many other children like myself at the time had been affected by the landlords. And thanks for letting me share that a little bit with you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for highlighting that, because I think when we talk about systemic impacts especially on Black communities, especially on the east side, you talked about the tie between housing stability and education, which isn't something that I think everyone would automatically tie together, but it really does. That instability of, school district, school area, all of those different things, or even just unsafe housing, whether there be mold or rodents, if you don't get enough sleep at night in your house, or all those other things. Because I've had classmates where their house is infested, with roaches or rats, and they can't get good night's sleep, and they're sleeping in class, they're sleeping in school, and then then it's suspension, then it's detention, all these other things, these punitive measures that aren't actually helping the root cause of why they're struggling and or not getting enough sleep. And so there's basic things like that then push us downwards in our trajectory of development. And I don't think people realize how important and integral stable and healthy housing is. And we also work on Push Buffalo on lead work. We just posted today on Instagram about proactive rental inspections, like making sure that housing is safe actually in the first place. But it shouldn't be the fact that a landlord is only redoing a place so that they can hike the rent up 3 times and kick you out and kick our communities out. Because at this point, that's what's happening. Is it true that good cause eviction also will help protect against rent hikes also? Isn't there a stipulation in there that they can only raise the rent a certain amount?
Yeah, so the law as passed by New York State limits rent hikes to once a year. Even if you're on a month-to-month lease, they can only raise it once a year. And they limit it to 10% or 5% plus the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, which is like a measure of inflation. So currently in Erie County, that's about 3.5%. So if we pass this in Buffalo, your landlord wouldn't be able to raise your rent more than 8.5% every year.
And we've had actually recently in the last couple of weeks, we've met with some elected officials who don't know that doesn't already exist. They already thought there was a rent cap protection, and there is not. So let's debunk that. There is no current legal rent cap protections for residents in the city of Buffalo.
So if your landlord wants to raise your rent by $500, they can, and we've seen that happen before. And right now, even on the west side, because gentrification and they want to fix things up, or they see people are coming in, they do that just to kick people out of their neighborhoods, right? And this is what happened. We're seeing neighborhoods getting gentrified. We're seeing people getting displaced for no reason at all. Like, this is the problem, and this is something that good cause eviction can fix. And like we were just also talking about, we are also seeing that historically too, people are redlined into like certain neighborhoods, and these houses are uninhabitable too. And now people are also scared, like people have been scared to like call these inspections in, right? Because they think that, oh, if I call this inspection in, I would get evicted by my landlord too, right? So now you have people that's stuck in neighborhoods too. Then you got people getting kicked out of neighborhoods. Good cause can fix some of these problems.
Absolutely. And I hear you and you saying that people really are essentially trapped in a situation because they fear, like you're saying, retaliation. And, I have personal family members who have dealt with that, who that's happened to. And so, obviously me working in an advocacy space, I'm like, you need to call this number, you need to do this, you need to do that. And none of them actually want to do any of that because they're like, there's no guarantee that if I do that, I'm going to have housing in a few weeks. So
I was hoping the Good Cause would help with some of the things that's happening now. A lot of the housing is controlled and owned by out-of-town landlords, and they come in their title, what is it, LLC or something like that?
Yep.
So you never know who's the owner. So that we have a difficult time trying to interact with the landlord. Only time we interact with him when he wants his rent, okay, or they evicting you. So I think this Good Cause would help us with that, especially we'll know who the landlord is, as well as having more private owners and ownership of houses as opposed to people from out of town.
Absolutely. That's a major, major problem is out-of-town ownership. And that's been a part of the discussion of like the Airbnb, the, short-term rental issue as well, because not only are they kind of gentrifying and trying to raise rents, for higher income, the limited amount that there are in Buffalo higher income earners. But also, there's people that are trying to get into that short-term rental business that also are doing that under LLCs and different things like that. I think we were just at a Common Council hearing last year at the end of the year sometime, and there were so many out-of-town people with LLCs trying to get approved in the Buffalo Common Council, ownership of certain properties, because right now you have to get your short-term rental approved in the Buffalo Common Council during a certain hearing. But it was astonishing to me that people were like, oh yeah, I think it's going to be fine. And we already don't even have enough housing for residents here. And to your point of people feeling trapped in certain neighborhoods, it is like, I have friends that are working fast food, minimum wage jobs or whatever they can. And they know I can't go try and get an apartment on the West Side right now. Like I have to go to Lovejoy, or I have to go to Cold Springs, or I have to go to whatever neighborhood it is, because maybe then I'll be able to afford something. And even when I can't afford it, I just have to accept whatever condition it's in. Like I can't expect too much. And that just shouldn't be the case. Like we shouldn't be going into it with, we have to settle for infestation with leaks, I've seen ceilings collapsing. I've seen watermarks. I've seen mold. List goes on and on.
And in the cases too that it's even hard, if it's the housing market is hard, as you said, period, but it's even harder for Black and brown people too. We're more likely to be evicted too, and it's harder for us to get apartments too. Studies have found that too. So that is it's every time it's always double. We're always getting hit harder, right? Mm-hmm. And then Buffalo has one of the highest evictions in upstate New York, and then we're even comparable to some of the boroughs in New York City. Mm-hmm. So that's a sad thing. So we're and then Black women are still one of the highest folks to get evicted too. So it's just where do we win?
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
I would like to make 2 points. A lot of the houses being developed now, I see a lot of complexes. They title them as affordable housing. In actuality, they're not, because there's a limit on your income. And if you don't meet that standard, those affordable houses are not for us, because we don't make that kind of money. Point in case, I'm 75 years of age. I'm on a limited income. So I have triple problems trying to find housing. So it's difficult, especially for seniors. I speak on behalf of seniors and minorities in general.
Absolutely. And, there's barriers to entry, and then there's also the higher level of evictions. And I know I've personally experienced, my name's Deja, right? And just me making calls to find an apartment at times, I've been asked well, what part of town are you from? Or different things like that. It's ingrained into, and there's no, accountability or system or mechanism to aid anyone dealing with these type of issues, and so I think, and to your point of the affordable housing standards, they're impossible. They're impossible to me. I see these charts that they put out, and then some of the new developments say they're part of affordable housing, but they really only made 4 or 5 units affordable because that's the limit for like the tax break that you get from New York State. And so is it really affordable housing if you have 55 units and only 5 are affordable, quote unquote? I don't think so. So, I mean, it's clearly those places are being developed for a certain part of the population, but not, us. It's really disheartening, I think. Yeah.
And I think that's why we kind of look at Good Cause Eviction as kind of this foundation for tenants' rights in the city of Buffalo. You talk about absentee and, frankly, slumlords on the east side, right? We talk about how this is a law that would affect bad landlords, people who aren't in the neighborhoods, because the goal of housing policy in general is to build community, right? And if you're moving 18 times before high school, you're never going to feel a part of the community. And having that community creates safer neighborhoods, it creates more lively neighborhoods and more investment in your neighborhood. And I think one of the things we don't talk about a lot is Erie County, like Janaea was saying, has the second highest rate of evictions in New York State, but that number doesn't count the retaliatory evictions that we were talking about, or the pricing out of people. And we know how it goes in our neighborhoods, right? If you complain about something, you get a notice of eviction. There's no real reason behind it, but they don't want someone who complains. Because it's so unregulated, landlords can just find a tenant who's not going to complain, deal with all the problems of the house themselves, mold, rodents, cockroaches, and pocket their money at the end of the month. So I think this is a good law in terms of giving tenants that confidence to assert their rights, because these are already their rights under the law. You have a right to not have rodents in your living space. That should be common sense, but a lot of people are too afraid to assert that right.
Absolutely. And I want to tell you, you jogged a story in my mind that actually just recently happened to a friend of mine. I hope they don't mind I tell this story. But their water boiler heat went out in their apartment, and their landlord had said in the fall they were going to send a technician to come check it before the winter came, right? And the technician came, said, yeah, this thing doesn't work. And the landlord was like, I don't know, that person's a hack. Like, maybe another person will say something different and can turn it on or whatever. And maybe like forgot. They have multiple properties, whatever. It never came back up. And, my friend was in their apartment without heat into those like frigid, really freezing into January. And finally, was like, hey, hello, my boiler doesn't work and you never came back to fix this. And by the way, my back steps are broken and I'm almost breaking my neck every time I'm going outside. And ironically, the landlord then tried to give them a notice, like this warning notice that they were negligent and telling the landlord that they didn't have heat and that could have damaged permanently their property. And so they were negligent and then therefore had grounds to be evicted. And I was like, you're trying to evict them because they don't have heat for the winter because you didn't come back and fix the boiler after you sent a technician? Like, it was the most mind-blowing as they were, we were sending voice notes back and forth. And I just couldn't, every time they sent me another one, I'm like, you're joking me. And they tried this fear tactic of putting a certified mail envelope that wasn't officially mailed yet, but with like this letter in it saying like, I can evict you for these negligent things. And they're like, I didn't do anything except not have heat in January. Like, why did you send this letter? And it was like this fear thing that, and luckily my friend is also in advocacy and knows their rights and all of those things. So that didn't work. But I could only imagine if you were like a new American or just anyone, like, and didn't know that wasn't okay, that you were just fearful that, oh no, they're going to evict me, let me not say anything else, And
if you've lived or worked on the east side, you've heard these stories. Everyone has them, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to say that that was on the west side, which some people feel, oh, that's a better place or whatever like that. No, lower west side, near Duval. But anyway, go ahead.
Again, two more things I'd like to mention. In my recent situation, the landlord put something out to us saying that the mailman slipped because you get complaints from the mailman and stuff like that. You know, we're going to be responsible for that. You know, as far
For
as
like the sidewalk?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
So, because we're right in front of our house, so they just sent us something. But I also learned through other ways that things like if there's a bed bug situation, not me personally, the landlord's telling people they have to take care of that themselves. They're not going to cover those type of infestations. So who can afford that, you know?
Oh, my goodness.
That's the other thing I want to mention. I have experience of being formerly incarcerated. So if you had that experience, no one's going to rent to you.
Yeah.
And something happened in the house while you're there, they're going to evict you. So I'd like to see something try to address those issues as well, because a lot of people in my community, they have that background. So that further puts you back as far as getting suitable housing.
Absolutely. To that point, I also had another story from a friend of mine where their house got raided. They had the wrong house, but they kicked the door down, caused some property damage. And the landlord was like, well, clearly you invited this chaos into my property, so now I'm going to evict you. Even though it was the wrong house, even though they hadn't done anything illegal, they weren't even criminally charged, they already faced that threat. So to your point of, if you actually do have any history, former incarceration or anything like that, it's like triple the amount of you know, vitriol and like kind of fear that you have to have. It's just a terrible situation.
Yeah,
like, I don't know.
This is like, all of this is like ridiculous. Like, we just, like, this is what this law is saying. It's just like, you need a good cause, you need a good reason. Like, people shouldn't have to move. We shouldn't break up communities. Like, people shouldn't, like in Mr. Jed, he was talking about, like, moving is caused like distraught. Like, it messes up, like, it messes with you, right? It can have like other like effects, right? And we always, like, we say that, like, if you're a good landlord, you shouldn't have to worry about it. It doesn't change any of your laws that you do. Like, it doesn't change like that. It doesn't change you anything that you do that much. Like, you still can technically evict a tenant, right? Unless if they don't follow your lease, right? So it's just like, you can still work around things, right? So you shouldn't have anything to worry about as long as you're a good
and
landlord.
let's debunk that a little bit, because anytime a landlord sees a law about, rent tenants' rights, they freak out and feel like, oh, well, this is infringing on my rights somehow or whatever. So good cause eviction still means, literally in the name, that you can still evict people, just have a good cause.
Yeah.
So, if there are payment issues or other things like that, even though I still feel like there should be arrangements and things done before we just get rid of people for financial situations, especially in these days and times. But it's like you have to, it's just forcing you to actually deal with social interaction and human connection and community. And I feel like there's this disconnect from the owner class sometimes, from that sense of communal kind of, habitation and things of that nature. People are very detached from that human experience of ownership and land stewardship and things of that nature. If you're renting out property that are going to be people's homes and habitation, I just feel like you have to have a certain sentimentality to be able to do something like that. But I find that a lot of that human nature aspect is taken out of the equation for a lot of people that own property. And, we can talk about why that is in capitalism and all those other things. But I won't get into that specifically. But I really hope that, at this point, I guess my question is, why hasn't Buffalo, in your opinion, opted in, and what does it take? Does the Common Council need to pass a resolution? What does it look like? Is it Erie County? Like, what does it look like for Buffalo to then implement this law that's already passed on the state level?
Well, if the Common Council wants to just sign a resolution tomorrow, they can, and we can be opt-in. Like, that's really all it takes. A couple of cities already did it so far. Like, Albany, Rochester just did it recently. Like those Ithaca, those are some of the bigger ones. Nyack, for some of the smaller ones. So a lot of people just like did it real quick and signed it. So like my question is, why hasn't Buffalo did it? I mean, we've been meeting with some of the council members to try to discuss it. But like if we wanted to, we can tomorrow. But we haven't.
Has there been anything explicitly expressed about a hesitation to implement it at all?
We know as of now we have like some the landlords are not really as again like they're scared.
Okay.
And they've been talking into the council's ear. So it's just like, okay, now we have to like calm them down and discuss like, hey, like you still like we said, like debunk those theories, right? That's not true. Like this law, you still have some of the same rights and same protections, and also show that we can. Sometimes it's in some people's opinions, it's more like we have to choose this or that. We have to choose renters or home ownerships versus no, or we can do everything at once. So, or some things can be used as a building block and a stepping stone. So it's always, we have this scarcity mindset, this or that, where it's just like, no, it's enough room for everything to go around and we don't have to choose, right? And that's been a biggest problem. A lot of people are just focused on like one thing. It's just like, no, we have enough room to go around and we don't have to choose only one thing.
Absolutely.
And to expand on that a little bit, you know, we've heard a lot from the Common Council. You know, I would love to, you know, promote home ownership, like people getting starter homes, things like that. And for me, that's always about financial stability. And how can you have financial stability if you're moving 18 times in your childhood? 60% of Buffalo are renters, right? You can't build up that stability to be able to buy a home if you can't even, you know, manage to stay in your rented home, right?
No, absolutely not. And don't even talk about the cost of moving and finding a home now with all these rental application fees and the background checks. And luckily there's people that are, you know, places like Home and things like that, raising awareness that you can provide your own background check if you've done it in the last, I don't remember what the time period is, but it's 30 days or something like that. But people don't know that, and they're paying all these fees over and over. I mean, it can add up to so much just to move. And let's not even talk about landlords that don't give you your security deposit back, because then you're losing out money there. If you're moving 18 times and each time you're not getting your security deposit back, do you know how many thousands of dollars that is? I mean, I can only imagine how much money people are losing.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I wanted to openly talk about those 18 times we moved.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of it, but my mother had to survive with the kids. But it was brought up about redlining earlier. But before I get into that, I want to mention that, as you know, we're in a food desert right now. Supermarkets right here. They had their problems over there. So with the red line that was brought up, they're forcing us in the east side to move out to Chickawaga. They've got new developments out there, North Tonawanda. So we're taking out of our community and putting these areas. And there's where they're putting this at, there's no markets out there for to get to. And there's no bus service, regular bus service. So we get further messed around over the years with this redlining and things like that. I wanted to move to Chickawaga, but I found out there's no bus service on the weekends. So you're stuck. And like if you got a snowstorm and stuff like going on now, you have to get to the supermarket. You can't do it. So those kind of issues bother me.
Absolutely. And it's just trapping people even more. They can't get to work. They can't get to school. They can't do anything.
And they're receptive to us moving out there. You know why? Because the rent is so high in those complexes they're building out there. So people with Section 8, they go into those places, and the other people are left around. You got to help with Section 8. If you don't have Section 8, you got to foot that bill yourself, and we can't afford that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just taking advantage of our communities, our programs, and things of that nature. I really appreciate you all coming to talk about Good Cause today, and I hope that our listeners and viewers are learning a little bit more about the real faces and stories behind tenant rights. I think there's a lot of buzzworthy issues, happening, labor movements, other things like that. Tenants' rights is a part of that. But I don't think people really understand the policies that are being implemented or attempting to be implemented and the barriers that those policies are facing, and how we can try and overcome those by debunking, having real conversations like these to talk about the real life experiences behind housing issues. And we touch on so many tangential points of redlining, of education, of economic opportunity, jobs, employment, other things like that. Even transportation, public transportation, another huge issue, which I hope we're going to be able to have on the show soon, the Citizens for Regional Transit. But there's so many just intersectional issues involved in housing. I don't know if anyone has some last thoughts or remarks that they want to share.
Yes, one thing important and I would like to say, and just a way to get involved if you want to see good cause pass, because like you said, it couldn't pass tomorrow, but it's not. So I think we need more people. We need more people to talk about. We need more people to get involved. So one way is to come to us, our websites. Like I said, I'm with Push Buffalo. He's with DSA. So you can look at our Instagrams. We always have events and things going on. I'm with at Push Buffalo, or even we have a power hour every second Tuesday of the month from 6 to 7 p.m. So you can join that and you can hear more about our campaign and see how you can get involved. So yeah,
absolutely.
And I just want to kind of touch on a question you asked earlier. Why is Buffalo kind of behind the ball on this? In other places where we've seen this passed, the initial law applied to New York City, and every other municipality was opt-in. Where we saw this passed in other communities, they had a lot of tenant organizing, right? The tenants were organized. So when the developers went to go whisper in their council's ear, the tenants who lived in the buildings of those developers had one voice and could say, hey, we don't agree with this. We are the majority of voters in this place, and that's true in Buffalo, and we want this, and that's how they pass it. So in Buffalo DSA, we kind of focus on kind of that mass people power, right? Organizing people. So I would love to, start organizing tenants in a more formal way, so to speak, so that we can fight this, landlord lobby, so to speak. And if you're interested, we're Buffalo DSA on all socials, Instagram, Twitter. We're even on Blue Sky now. We technically have a Facebook group. I don't think we're very active on Facebook. And we have a link tree on our website, buffalodsa.org. So if you want to come join us. Like I said, I'm the co-chair of the Infrastructure Committee. We meet every second Saturday at Crane Library in Elmwood Village. So they're open to the public. You don't even have to be a member. So come join us.
Perfect.
I mentioned earlier I'm a volunteer with Push because I like to see what Push is doing. I also like to mention I was looking at the Challenger magazine recently, and I saw with Rochester, their city council passed a good cause. Okay, but the last event I was with when you were there, I was at your event in upstate. Wyatt, he stood up and made a statement that he's pushing the good cause, and Push, this organization, and the other organizations I belong to, if we support him to get that passed, because he can't do it alone. But also, I'm very, very involved in the community. I sit on 8 boards of community-based organizations. I'm on the board of directors. So I'm trying to fight for some of the things that we know we're entitled to, not just housing, medical situations, and stuff like that. So again, I'm on a board for about 7 or 8 community organizations, and thank you for letting me share.
Of course. And I thank you all three powerful community leaders for being here with me today on The Public Good. This has been The Public Good. We've talked about good cause eviction and a lot of other things, it turns out. I'm so excited to have had this conversation, and I hope that the viewers have learned so much. We are here every Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. on YouTube, Apple, Spotify podcasts, and on WFO 96.5. Please make sure you tune in and listen in, and we will see you again next week. This is Deja signing off. Bye.